from the UK, and also to provide the latest information and share some of the key messages around preparing for these changes, which will commence from the 31st of January 2024. My name is Damien Flynn. I'm the head of the Brexit and International Trade Division in the Department of Agriculture, and I'm coordinating the department's preparations for these changes. Do some housekeeping first. As with our previous webinars, we will be recording today's webinar, and it will be available on the department's YouTube channel after this webinar. We will circulate that to all invitees, along with the slide pack from today and other relevant documents and links to other relevant information and guidance. As with previous webinars, we will have a question and answer session after the presentation, and I will be joined by a number of experts in the department who will help me in answering any questions you have arising from the information we provide today. We will also circulate a Q&A document with written answers after the webinar, as we have done after previous webinars. In relation to the questions, I would ask you to put them in the questions function as part of the webinar. Please don't use the chat function. Please use the questions function, because if you put them in the chat function, we won't be able to see them. So, as I say, if you have any questions, please type them into the questions section of the panel, the webinar panel. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to move on my slides. So I just want to begin today. This is the agenda for today's webinar. I just want to begin by emphasising that these changes are definitely coming in from the 31st of January. UK, you will have seen that the UK have issued a number of additional guidance notes over the Christmas period. We have circulated them widely. They're available on UK websites. I have links to those here on this page here. With the latest guidance notes from the UK, so you should consult those. But just to reiterate, these changes are now happening. I know they have been postponed a number of times, but they are definitely now happening. All the information we have from the UK authorities that these will commence from the 31st of January. And just to point out, the 31st of January, this means they will enter into force from midnight on the 31st of January. So that means the requirements will apply for movements of agri-food goods from Ireland to GB from midnight on the 31st of January. So if you require a pre-notification or an export health certificate, that will apply from midnight on the 31st of January. This is now only 3 weeks away, so we do need to intensify our preparations and finalise those. It's really important that all actors in the supply chain are clear about their responsibility, including communication between those actors, whether it's the food business, the departments, the supervisory team responsible for supporting the business, and also the logistics providers, I would say, are key to understanding what's expected of them and the timings around all of these requirements. In terms of today's webinar, I will recap the main changes that are coming into force from the 31st of January as part of the UK's border target operating model. This will focus on customs changes, pre-notification requirements for Irish goods, and export health certification, how you apply for that and the requirements associated with that. A key message remains is for business to make sure that they're engaging with their competent authority supervisory body, whether that be the department, the HSE, the Sea Fisheries Protection Agency, or the local authority veterinary service, to agree a process for how export certification can be provided. You should also be communicating, as I say, with all your supply partners in GB to ensure that everybody knows who's responsible for these different elements, and also with your logistics providers to confirm timings associated with certification and aligning them with your logistic providers and their timings. I will also outline broadly the process for export health certification, applying for export health certification for different product commodities, meat, dairy, animal byproducts, fish and plant products. I will also touch on transit health certification requirements or requirements for UK for transit movements via the GB land bridge to Europe, to highlight what the changes are there. And then I will outline some key messages about preparing for these changes. And as I said, we will have a question and answer session after my presentation. And again, I just urge you to use the questions tab for submitting questions. This slide I just outlined here has some of the key documents which provide information about what these changes are. So there's links to the border operating model. There's links to the export health certificates, which the UK require for EU goods, and also links to the risk categorization that the UK is applying for animal products and also for plant products. These are all important documents to consult to make sure you understand what requirements apply to your products, depending on which risk category in particular they fall into, low, medium or high. So while the focus of today's webinar is on the SPS changes, which will apply from the 31st of January for EU agri-food goods going to GB, I do want to touch on some customs changes which the UK are also introducing from the 31st of January. In relation to these changes, the UK will require full customs controls will be introduced. This will mean that UK import declarations will need to be pre-lodged, and goods moved from the island of Ireland will become subject to checks and controls. There is currently an option for a 6-month delay on submitting these import declarations, but that will no longer be available, so that's a significant change. These pre-lodged declarations will then be entered on the UK's Goods Vehicle Movement Service. To be able to access this, you need to have a UK government account to be able to use GVMS. All the movement reference numbers, MRNs, need to be put into GVMS to generate what's called Goods Movement Reference, GMR. This GMR is required to allow the consignments or the containers to board the ferries from Ireland for GB. You won't be able to, shipping companies will not allow you to board unless you have this goods movement reference number assigned by GVMS. If your goods require an IPAS pre-notification to be made, if the IPAS pre-notification reference number is not present, the UK import declaration cannot be finalised. Therefore, it will not be available to enter on GVMS to generate a GMR. So just to emphasise that, it's important that the IPAS pre-notification, if required, is also generated, because that will be part of the submission of the import declaration to GB. This is an important change, so all actors in Ireland to GB supply chain should be ready for this and understand who's responsible for ensuring it is completed correctly. So again, I just want to reiterate just some of the key changes that are coming in from an SPS point of view for movements of goods to Great Britain from the 31st of January. So an important pre-notification will need to be made on the UK's IPAS system for all low, medium and high risk imports of animal products, and for high and medium risk plant products. This needs to be made by your GB importer. If you're moving goods via the GB land bridge, a pre-notification must also be made, and this must be made by a GB-based representative. Export health certification will be required for EU imports of medium risk goods and plant products to GB from the 31st of January. And also there is a requirement for transit export health certifications for high and medium risk animal products moving across the GB land bridge. Plant products transiting to GB land bridge do not require a phytosanitary certificate. These requirements do not apply to Northern Ireland goods designated by the UK as qualifying Northern Ireland goods. This applies in respect of goods that are leaving for GB via Dublin port as well, or from Irish ports. So if they qualify as Northern Ireland qualifying goods, these requirements do not apply to them. From the 30th of April, the UK will be having systemic documentary and risk-based identity and physical checks at UK border control posts for goods coming from the EU. However, this will exclude Ireland because the border control posts will not be stood up for the West Coast UK ports servicing Irish routes. The UK have indicated that the earliest those controls will apply for Irish movements would be the 31st of October 2024. But that is contingent on the UK having in place the appropriate border infrastructure. It should be noted, however, that documentary checks on IPAS pre-notifications and export health certifications will be undertaken by the UK authorities during this period. So there may be the documentary checks may result in interaction between the UK authorities and the operator responsible for the load in Great Britain. So now I just wanted to move on to the specific requirements in relation to pre-notification and then export health certification. So import pre-notification on the UK food and feed import system, IPAS, are being introduced for all imports of animal products and high and medium risk plant products from Ireland to GB from the 31st of January 2024. These notifications are already in place for the rest of EU imports since the 1st of January 2022. So this is a new requirement related to movements of Irish goods to GB. The UK have indicated that an import notification must be made by a GB-based importer or agent to GB authorities 1 working day before the expected arrival of the goods. If you're moving goods via the GB land bridge, pre-notification must also be made by a GB-based representative. That's the latest information we have from the UK authorities. The UK have indicated that an import notification can be made up to 30 days before arrival. I just wanted to note that IPAS, in order to make an IPAS pre-notification, your business needs to be on the approved list of exporters on the EU traces system to allow the pre-notification to be made. So it's really important that you check your business has the appropriate export status on traces. Even if your goods are low risk and they don't require export health certification, they will require to be on this listing on traces to allow your GB importer or your GB agent to make the IPAS pre-notification. There is further UK guidance on IPAS available on their websites, and we have links here on the slide pack to that information. I also wanted to highlight that there are some DEFRA webinars announced on how to complete an import notification, taking place on the 11th of January at 2 o'clock and on the 18th of January at 2 o'clock. And again, we have registration links here on the slide pack, which will be circulated after today's webinar. In relation to export health certification will be required for medium risk as designated by the UK authorities, animal products, plants and plant products, and high risk food and feed of non-animal origin from the EU to GB and via the GB land bridge. Certification for animal products will be completed on the EU traces system, which provides for these certificates to be generated on an electronic basis with e-signature and e-sealing of certificates, which then can be uploaded to IPAS as part of the IPAS process. Using this system avoids the need for the original paper copy of the cert signed, the original paper copy signed by the veterinarian or certifying officer to travel with the consignment. So this is a very significant benefit in terms of using the electronic version of the cert from IPAS, uploaded onto IPAS, excuse me. The key message here is to contact your local supervisory team, competent authority supervisory team, whether that's the department, the HSE, the Sea Fishery Protection Agency, or the local authority veterinary service, to ensure that the business processes and standard operating procedures are in place to support the provision of certification if required. You can also consult with your local supervisory team to confirm whether certification is required or not, based on the use case risk category model. One point I just wanted to highlight was, because we haven't had a number of queries on this, is that for products which are being dispatched for export from a DAFM supervised premises, which originate from a food business not supervised by DAFM, a pre-movement certificate from the non-DAFM supervised plant is not required, provided the product has an EU oval mark approval health mark on the packaging. However, relevant commercial and supporting information will be needed to accompany these products to enable the FBO seeking certification to fill out part 1 of the export cert on traces, and for DAFM certifying officers to complete controls and checks to support certification of these products. So now I just wanted to move on to highlight some of the business processes associated with different product categories. So I'm going to touch on meat and meat products, dairy and dairy products, animal byproducts, fishery products, and plant products. This is a complex requirement associated with certification, so there are slightly different processes for each of these categories, although the general framework is the same. Again, just to reiterate, EU traces will be used to generate all certificates for the export of animal products to GB. Critical message remains to engage with your supervisory team to work through this process and confirm the standard operating procedure to support certification, including the provision of supporting documents and in a concise, consistent and timely manner. DAFM has run a number of training sessions in relation to certification, and these are available on the DAFM website. I would say it's critical for businesses to engage with these training events, so please do look these up, and we will provide links to these training sessions. So I'm just going to begin with meat and meat products. So this slide provides a sample business flow for how the steps in the process for securing an export health cert for meat products. What we're saying is that each food business should submit a schedule of certificates that they require for the following week to their DAFM veterinary team to inform them of the requirement for health certs in the following week. The food business is responsible for submitting part 1 of the export health cert on traces with all supporting documentation, and this should happen at least 12 to 24 hours in advance of the certification requirement. The applicant should also email the local DAFM supervisory team notifying them of the individual application for an export health cert. This email should include the link from traces or the traces certificate number, the establishment of dispatch, and the list of supporting documentation attached to traces, whether that's a CHED, commercial document, or relevant traceability information, and also the estimated time of departure and date of departure for the consignment. The inspectors will then carry out their technical and regulatory controls, and if these checks are passed, the export health certificate is approved on traces. The certifying officer, the veterinary officer, will sign the cert, electronically sign the cert on traces, and it will be e-sealed. And this will be, once this is done, this will be passed back to the applicant so that they have the e-seal version from traces. These e-seal versions then will need to be sent to your GB importer for upload to iPass. It's really key that all of these steps are fully agreed by each food business with their supervisory team, and a standard operating procedure is developed to meeting all of these steps and with clarity about timing and who's responsible for doing these. This is really a critical step that businesses should be locking in with their supervisory team if they haven't already done this. So I really urge you to make sure the standard operating procedure for provisional certification is agreed with your supervisory team. So again, key messages here: weekly schedule of consignment should be submitted the previous week to the supervisory team. We are urging food business to focus on ensuring that certification can take place within core working hours between 9 o'clock and 5:30. If a food business requires out-of-hours certifications outside of these hours, they must make a case to their DAFM supervisory team. Consideration of out-of-hours certification will be based on the most efficient and sustainable use of resources and based on the following out-of-hours windows: between 7:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock and between 5:30 and 10 o'clock at night. No certification will take place outside of these certification windows. At weekends, the commitment from the department is to provide a limited service available on a Saturday morning. No service will be available on Sunday. So this is the general approach that the department is applying to certification. So again, you should be engaging with your local team to ensure, in your engagement with your local team, you should be using these parameters as the base on which you're engaging with them. I mentioned that the department has run a number of training sessions on export health certification, and I provided links here to that training, the latest training, and also to a recent department trader notice which issued this week on the certification requirements for meat and meat preparations, meat products to GB. Again, these are vital resources I would encourage you to engage with, because they set out clearly the requirements and the demands associated with certifications, which is a complex process, And so clear processes and standard operating procedures need to be agreed between food businesses and their supervisory teams in the provision of certification. Now, this is the step-by-step map in relation to dairy products. So in relation to dairy products, the UK's risk-based approach has thankfully ensured that many dairy products are considered to be low risk, so therefore they do not require certification. However, there is an export health certification requirement for dairy products which are made with unheat treated milk, and also a number of other products such as infant formula, baby foods for special medical purposes. So there is an export health certification requirement for some dairy products. Again, the process flow is similar to on the meat side. So the food business is responsible for filling out part 1 of the export health certificate. Once this is done, the food business should send a notification email to the dedicated department's email address in our milk policy division. The email address is here, dairy certs GB traces at agriculture.gov.ie. And this will notify them of the application. The email must include the food business point of contact for certification, the certificate numbers, and a direct link from the traces for the certificate. Again, the estimated time and date and time of departure of the consignment, and a list of documentation which has been attached to traces application. The department inspectors will carry out the necessary checks and controls, and if these are passed, the certifying officer will e-sign the certificate in traces, and the certificate will be e-sealed and sent to the back to the food business for uploading for their GB importer to upload it to IPAFs. So then, just some key messages there. It's really important to engage with everyone in the supply chain to understand who's responsible for these different tasks. You need to identify if your product requires an export health certificate, and then you need to have that discussion with your local supervisory team to agree the business process specific for your business, and that everyone's clear about the timing of provision of certification, so that you can share that with your other partners in the supply chain, whether that be your GB importer or your logistics provider. Again, I just wanted to touch on animal byproducts and the process associated with animal byproducts. Again, very similar process, but just to highlight in box 2, the requirement here is that the exporter notifies the dedicated animal byproducts in my email inbox of upcoming imports 48 working hours in advance. Again, the FBO must complete the first part of the the export health certification on traces. The inspectors will carry out their controls, and then the cert will issue as with the other product categories. Again, really important that each food business engages with the supervisory team responsible for their business. This is really critical to agree that the working process for provision of certification for animal byproducts. This is a complex process, so it's really important that there's a clear understanding for all businesses around the timing of when certificates can be provided, and that everyone is agreed on when what that process is. So I really encourage all food businesses to engage with their local supervisory team first to identify do they require certification, and also then to agree the business process to support that certification for their business. In relation to fishery products, again, just to highlight, exports of low, medium and high risk fish products will require an IPRAS pre-notification by their UK-based importer. High and medium risk fish and fishery products will require an export health certificate. Again, traces will be used for this. The food business must submit for part 1 of the export health certificate on traces to the SFPA 48 hours in advance of the certification requirement. The controls and checks will then be carried out on a risk-based approach by the competent authority. And just to highlight, IIU, illegal and unregulated fishery catch certificates will still be required, and these will still be in paper format. So those documents are not being provided electronically; they will be provided in paper format, in original hard copy format. Just moving on to plant products, and there's a slightly different process here. So again, important to consult the risk categories, the UK risk categories for plant products, to understand whether you require a phytosanitary certificate. If you do require a phytosanitary certificate, you should engage with DAFM early, 14 days in advance. You should provide pre-notification through the department's export certification system, and provide any additional phytosanitary requirements support documentation as needed. Inspections will be required and must be scheduled, and specific additional testing may be needed in advance. So it's really important that all those steps are clearly mapped out in a timely fashion. Just also to note in relation to plant products, exporters may need to engage with GB importers to obtain what additional phytosanitary requirements apply for the different commodities. So again, just to highlight the importance of engaging with all the actors in the supply chain. I just wanted to highlight, we've had a number of questions about wood packaging material in previous webinars, but also in questions we received. So again, just to highlight again that all goods must be transported using wood packaging that meets the ISPN 15 standard. Wood packaging includes pallets, crates, dunnage, etc., used in the transport of any kind of goods. So just to highlight that is a UK requirement, and that all movements of these products in this wood packaging material must be compliant with that standard. So just to highlight that message, because we've had a number of queries in relation to that. Okay, so I just wanted to then also just maybe touch base on transit movements or land bridge movements across GB to the EU, and the requirements associated, the UK requirements for those. So again, just to highlight that for high, medium and low risk animal products, moving via the GB land bridge, there is a requirement for pre-notification via IPAFs, and the UK have indicated that must be undertaken by a UK-based entity. So you do really need to make sure you have plans in place to address this requirement. There may, again, if your product is a medium or high risk product, it will require a transit export health certificate, a GB transit export health certificate. The UK has specific transit certificates as part of their export health certificates, and these will need to be provided for transits of those medium risk animal products. These products will be subject to entry and exit, identity and physical checks at UK border control posts, but the date for this has not been fully decided by the UK authorities. We understand that it will apply for goods entering GB from the EU along the same timeline as border control posts entries for GB imports will apply, so that would be the end of April. But in respect of movements from Ireland into GB of transits, this will not commence before the 31st of October 2024. In respect of low risk animal and animal products, these do not require health certificates and will not be subject to routine checks at UK BCPs. They may be subject to non-routine intelligence-led checks by UK authorities, but they do require an IPAS pre-notification. In relation to plants and plant products transiting the GB land bridge, there is a significant difference. There is no requirement for pre-notification via IPAFs or phytosanitary certification for high, medium or low risk plant products transiting GB. So there are no, for plant products transiting GB, there are no IPAFs, pre-notification or certification requirements. These products will continue to require a signed declaration stating that the goods are under phytosanitary transit and are packaged in such a way that there is no risk to spreading pests and diseases through GB. So again, just to highlight the significant difference there between animal products and plant products transiting GB land bridge. So I just want to touch on some of the key things and messages and questions all businesses should be answering, I think, in preparing for these changes. So again, the key message, and I've said it several times already, and you've heard me say this previously on webinars, you really do need to be fully engaged with your competent authority, supervisory body. Again, whether that's the department, HSE, local authority, veterinary service, or Sea Fishery Protection Agency, to consider what requirements apply to your business and for your exports to GB. So first of all, to highlight, you need to identify whether certification is required for your products. So again, you need to consult the UK risk categorization guidance to identify if your good is medium or low risk category. If it's medium risk, it will require an export health certificate. So you need to confirm what health certificate you require and that your business can meet all the requirements on that UK certificate. Second key step is to examine your supply chain. Know who's responsible for meeting each EU import requirement. So who will be completing the pre-notification on the UK IPAS system? Who will be doing that for you? Your GB importer, your GB agent, or somebody, or what other GB entity will be doing that for your supply chain? Is your business properly registered on EU traces as an exporter? Again, just to highlight, this is really important because it's required not only for certification, but also for low risk goods and their pre-notification on IPAS, because the UK is using the EU traces listing of exporters to allow IPAS notifications to take place. Who in your business is, if you require export health certification, who in your business is responsible for applying that, or who in your supply chain is responsible for applying for that? If it's not your food business, is it somebody else on your behalf? And who is ensure that this certificate, when completed and sent and issued, is uploaded to the IPAS system, because that's part of the UK process. Another message just along your supply chain is that to ensure that your logistics partner is aware of the timing associated with completion of certification process, and that the logistics for each consignment are aligned with this, to avoid any situations where certification is not aligned with the logistics of moving the goods to the GB. And again, on that engagement with your local supervisory team, you need to confirm what certification is required, ensure that the certification requirements can be met, ensure that you have all the supporting documentation required by the certifying officer in a consistent and on a timely basis to allow them certify in the most efficient and effective way to support your business. This is really important, that your business puts itself in a position to support your certifying officer to provide the certification in the most efficient way. And again, just to reiterate, ensure that the business process, including the timings for certification, are fully agreed between you and your supervisory team to ensure that everyone fully understands when certification can, the basis on which it can be provided, and how it will be provided, and the timing of providing it. So just some key things maybe to focus on doing. Again, just to reiterate, check that you're registered appropriately as an approved exporter on the EU traces system. Engage with your supply chain to ensure everyone knows who's responsible for completing the different elements of the requirements on the UK side, including your logistics provider. Engage your local team as part of that process, your local supervisory team as part of that process. You can practice completing an export health cert on the traces training environment. And while all the UK certs are not on this training environment, there are some certs there, and you can, the part one of the export health certificate, which is the responsibility of the food business, is similar for all of the certs. So it is possible to practice completing that part of the form which you are responsible for. And then, as we have some links here to some training in relation to traces and generation of part one of the export health certificate. So again, familiarize yourself with that process because that's the part of the process which you are fully responsible for. Again, I would urge everyone to contact the department if you have any questions or queries, to engage with the resources we have up on our website. The links are here and the contact details are here. There is information there about the processes, recent training sessions, videos of previous webinars and information, links to UK government guidance. In relation to all of these requirements, just to highlight, these are UK requirements. The department and Irish authorities are not in control of these requirements and are not setting the parameters for them. So any clarity you require or need on these UK requirements, you should be contacting the UK authorities as well. The department is engaging with the UK, seeking clarity on a number of issues, and we will continue to do that. But because these are UK requirements, we are dependent on them providing the appropriate guidance and clarity as much as you are as food businesses exporting to GB. So I would encourage you all to engage with the UK authorities, with your GB customers and importers and agents, to get as much clarity as you can in terms of the requirements and the responsibilities on your food business to support your export to GB. So that's the presentation. I want to thank you for listening. Just to highlight again, these changes are coming very quickly now. We're only 3 weeks out. Changes will kick in from the 31st of January, as I say, from midnight on the 31st of January. So it's really important that your business has considered all these issues, has agreed the business processes internally and with the other actors in your supply chain, that everyone's aware of the requirements, who's responsible for filling the different elements, whether it's pre-notification, export health certification requirements, and that you also are fully engaged with your local compensatory supervisory team to agree detailed standard operating procedures about the provision of certification in particular, so that everyone understands how certification can be provided and when it can be provided, and that then is aligned with the other actors in your supply chain, including, I would say, just to highlight your logistics providers, to make sure they're fully aware of when certification will be available and pre-notification will be undertaken, to ensure that there's no disruption to your trade with GB or your movements of goods to GB from the 31st of January 2024.